Hello and welcome to Creating Canon with your hosts AJ Hamilton and Nocturnal Coco Pinocchio.
I don't even know where Coco or Pinocchio comes from.
Well,
Is it Pinocchio because he's a liar? The little kid's a liar?
I mean, it could be, but also the boyfriend at the beach, when he's talking to the little boy, says, hey, man, don't be Coco Pinocchio. It was a very odd turn of phrase, and I liked it. I loved it. I was like, CP, I gotta work it in somehow.
That's it. You could have just went with Nightmare.
I could, but I didn't want to be so obvious.
That's true.
And Nicholas C. Pappas. Yay! What's the sound of one hand clapping?
That's it, right there. Yep, so that's how you know it is another episode of Quarantine Canon. Quarantine Canon.
Yeah.
I feel like each episode of Quarantine is just slowly becoming longer and longer.
Yeah, I think so.
Until, we are eventually going to hit a point where, we talk about one movie for 24 hours straight.
We should just stream that, then. Just have people
that would be
tune in, come through, ask us questions, why we're doing this.
AJ, do you want to talk about one movie for 24 hours straight with me?
I think we could.
I'm trying to think, or maybe, we find a trilogy of some sort.
Yes, yeah. I think we could do that, yeah.
It may not be canon.
You know what we do? You know what we should do? We should go back and just do all of the Death Wishes, one right after the other.
All 5 of them?
Yeah, cross-reference, just put together, just a really complicated theory throughout, yeah.
How many people do you think would listen to a 24-hour episode?
-5.
Yeah. I don't even know if I would listen to it.
I think 5 people would launch themselves into space instead of listening to us. Instead of even having the opportunity to listen to us.
Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, here's what we do. We record a 24-hour episode.
Yes.
And then, you ready for this?
I am.
When there are protests over opening things back up or not, you just play the podcast at its loudest at those protests.
Yes.
And people will eventually just go the fuck back home.
They disperse. It's sound. It's sonic attacking. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. I think we just put ourselves down in our own podcast.
That's okay.
That we hope people listen to.
Hi, audience. How are you doing?
All jokes.
Hope you're doing well.
All jokes.
Hey, Nicholas C. Pappas.
Yes, AJ Hamilton.
What movie are we watching this week?
This movie, we went back to 1981.
Yes.
This week we are taking a look at a very early 21st Century Film Corporation movie.
Nice.
A movie that was 21st Century Films prior to Menachem Golan taking over.
Yeah.
I think just as important as... Because, when we talk about creating canon, everyone thinks Golan and Globus.
Sure.
So, in some ways...
But it has its roots in so many other things.
Well, and that's what I was trying to get at, is we are sort of covering all of canon, and I think part of the discussion has to be what was canon like before Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus, and then what was it like after Menachem Golan.
Sure.
And I think in order to understand that, we have to have some context, too, of, what was 21st Century Film Corporation after Menachem Golan, but then we also know what it was like, have to know what it was like before.
Of course.
That's a long way of getting to. We are looking at 1981's Nightmare, a movie written and directed by Romano Scavolini.
Nice.
So,
okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Let me tell you right off the bat.
Yes.
This is an amazing movie. I would compare it to Black Christmas combined with New Year's Evil.
I loved it as well.
I'm kidding, but you keep going.
No way.
I have never been more bored of... Maybe, here's the thing.
No way.
I'm gonna let the audience in to a little fucking real life. My neighbors this morning are constructing something. They are digging their pipes up and from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., they were drilling in the shared wall. So maybe I wasn't in the right mood for this movie. So I apologize to the movie. But honestly, I mean, I was serious when I compared it to those movies, but in not the best way.
Oh, that's
unfortunately
so interesting because I mean, like, I know we are hopping way ahead.
Yes, yeah.
I actually loved this movie.
All right.
I thought that was so... Like, look, is it perfect? No. But there is so much going on in, like, time and place.
Mm-hmm.
The movie is so sleazy.
Yes, it is. I got uncomfortable at times. I usually don't. But this was weird.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I wrote down 11 things that I would steal from this movie.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
wow.
That's how I was so totally in.
Damn,
I was in.
Well, before we get any further, can you give us a breakdown of what this movie is?
When a patient escapes from a mental asylum, he embarks on a murder spree of pornographic proportions in Nightmare. The reason I said pornographic proportions is because...
Well, you like alliteration.
I do. Yep. I do. But also, I gotta be honest, like, the blood and murder and gore in this movie was so pornographic.
I get you.
And I think that's where, like, that's the idea of, like, why I called it sleazy comes from.
Yeah.
And it's also important to note that Romano Scavellini was a hardcore porn
He was
director.
a pornographer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Prior to this movie. So you can definitely feel that, like, love. Like, you could definitely feel the elements of pornography and how you linger on bodies in this movie, but obviously done with gore and blood versus, you know, nakedness and bodily fluids.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, I think it's interesting. There was not to say that this had to be a rated PG movie or anything like that, but it is interesting, and this is definitely in line with canon and movies of the time. Where throw in some TNA, you get a few more people in the seats.
Yeah, a little blood. Well, this is so gory that it was definitely one of the video nasties from Britain.
I love that term so much.
Video nasties.
Yes,
it's a video nasty. We can't have it. It's a nasty. It's a nasty pasty.
So polite.
Yeah,
it's not like it's smut. No, it's a little nasty. It's a little nasty.
It's a video nasty. And in America, Warner Brothers, Universal Pictures, they all wanted the movie, but they wanted to cut down some of the gore.
Sure.
And Scavellini was like, nope, gore or no.
It's a weird mountain to die on.
It really is.
Especially with so many people vying for your movie, but
I'm fine with it. I mean, it got to the point where the UK distributor was actually sent to prison for releasing this movie.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's how like fucked up and bloody and gory this movie is.
I mean, yeah. They cut back to a severed head about a half a dozen times. Like the same severed head.
What really got me was like that opening nightmare of so the movie just opens, there's a dude laying in bed.
Yeah.
And he's sort of like squirming on the bed. Mm-hmm. There's just a tiny little bit of blood on the sheet, on this white sheet, on this little bed. He removes the sheet, he looks down at his feet, and there is a severed head, and then just like
entrails
awful. Entrails, like just all over, and the dude just starts screaming, and then the severed head's eyes open and look at him.
Yep.
And that actually got me, where I was like, oh my god, I was not. And then we like cut directly to him in the asylum screaming.
Yep.
And we see that it's a nightmare. And like, honestly, from that point, I was super in. I felt like the dreams were completely horrific throughout the movie. This movie did something really interesting where it was actually trying to tie to childhood trauma. That was
the repetition of trauma.
The repetition of trauma.
The way that it can be not only passed down hereditarily, but by the sins of the father.
So, yeah, straight on through.
To the other side.
No.
Do we have to pay for that?
I think we do now.
Damn it.
There goes all of our Amazon royalties.
Ah, shucks. Just pass it directly on.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I feel like this movie is quite disorienting.
Yes.
I would say. And interestingly, like I was saying earlier, this definitely follows in the path of New Year's Evil, where we do follow the quote-unquote, I would say, antagonist of the movie, the murderer, our kind of almost main character, because we start with him.
Yeah.
But he is also the killer.
Yeah.
And then we follow him almost equally to the people who are supposedly his victims,
well,
or will be his victims.
Several title cards throughout the movie that I actually found interesting.
Okay.
Yes. After he wakes up from that nightmare, he sees his therapist, all of that stuff happens, and there's a title card that says The First Day, New York.
New York, yes.
And there's just that. And then we see a second title card a little bit later, like a super title card that says First Day,
Florida.
Yes. Where we meet this family. It's a single mother and her 3 children. And then there's a babysitter named Kathy.
Sure.
There's a boyfriend. And there is a child named CJ who is sort of just a...
he's a trickster.
He's a little trickster.
Well, he's a little shit, truly.
Yes. But then the rest of the movie, we just get these title cards as it goes through that say the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day.
And then the final day.
And we finally get to a title card that says the final day. And I actually really liked
that
the
framing
use
device?
I like the framing device. And I also like the use of the final day because, like, at that moment, which was, I think, about a half hour left in the movie.
Yeah.
And the movie's only an hour and 35 minutes or so. At that point, I really leaned in because I was like, oh, shit. How is it going to go down? So I actually really liked the framing device throughout.
All right.
I thought it was an interesting juxtaposition, or it allowed for interesting juxtapositions throughout. We should also talk about the juxtapositions throughout the movie, too, because this is actually really... I said he escaped from an asylum, but he actually doesn't escape.
I was going to say, yeah, he is actually under the care of a doctor and a medical experimentation. The doctor looks like Doc Brown and John Oliver had a baby. And
I thought he looked like a human version of Dr. Teeth from Electric Mayhem.
Yes, I like that.
Without the gold tooth.
I like that one as well. And then there is the fellow who is in charge of the drug trial, who is Angry Josh Gad.
He also looks like the dude in Scanners who has his head blown up.
Ah, yeah, good call.
Thanks.
But
I've been trying to think like you.
So, in fact, they are experimenting on our main character, whose name's George Tatum, and he's actually played by Baird Stafford. Do we know anything about him?
No, his only other movie was this movie called Dog Tags, which was also written and directed by Romano Scavallini.
Okay.
So he doesn't do a lot. I do remember reading a note somewhere that he actually was so good on set that he would nail most of his scenes in a single take.
This guy was fucking committed to this role, and he was sweating constantly. It's like raining off of him.
Well, I mean, some of us have that ability, me being one of them.
Me too.
I know we're kind of hopping all over the place.
Yeah.
Minus, like, 1 or 2 actors, I thought the acting in this was actually pretty good overall.
You know who I couldn't stand was the mom.
That's interesting, because I actually have a note that says, I can't tell... Wait, let me see if I can find it. I can't tell if the mom is a brilliant actress or a terrible actress.
It felt like she was improvising all of her lines, or she just had the most tenuous grasp on them and was just, like, somehow making it around to the lines that she had to say.
That's what I meant, though. It's like, it felt like a little bit of, like, a cinema verite aspect going on.
Or, like, mumblecore.
Or, like, mumblecore, where it was, like, there were moments that felt so real throughout. Like, she had a couple... But then we get to, like, the guy who she's trying to get to sell her house, the real estate man, who is more wooden than every tree ever created.
Well, there were a lot of people in this that were only in this one movie.
Yes.
That guy included, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I wonder why his career did not take off.
Can't believe he didn't put that on his reel.
Seriously. But anyways, we should probably hop back. So Baird Stafford plays George.
Yes, and what it is the drug trial is said to be controlling him. Now, it's controlling him and allowing him to go back into society. And this is after he sexually assaulted and murdered a family in Brooklyn or something. That's what I got from that.
No. I don't think that's...
I'm pretty
sure. That's not what I got.
Oh, really?
What I had understood it as is he... Oh, maybe... Okay. Huh.
Yeah. There's an incident that happened beforehand, and this is like... This
not the incidents when he was a child,
no,
right?
No, there is something quickly mentioned about him, like, murdering a family.
So what I had understood was happening, and so this might connect with that
Sure.
in one way or another.
Uh-huh.
But what I had understood was the drug trial. The reason they were doing the drug trial, it was actually being put on by the United States Army because the drug was supposed to help people with extreme PTSD integrate back into society.
Oh,
so
interesting.
He was a person who had extreme PTSD that, through the drugs and through treatment, they felt was ready to integrate back into society.
Well, I like that story more than the story that he murdered some people and they just, like, trusted their drug enough to release him back on the street.
And this is the benefit of being the editor of the episodes.
Case history synopsis. Tatum transferred from Braston State Hospital for the criminally insane. Remanded there by 5th District Court after arrest as suspect in sexual mutilation and murder of Brooklyn family.
It might be a combination of both, now that I'm thinking about it.
No,
But, like,
it just seemed very odd to have him be... Was the head related to the way earlier incident as a child? That the head
that's
that
the
we're
child.
seeing?
Yes.
Okay. Because,
it's the same woman.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just in a different setting. But yeah, I was very confused because there is a mention of a murder that he enacted, but I guess it all got muddy with the conversations of the drug guys.
Yeah.
But
I think some of that
they let him out.
There were little bits that were unclear. Yeah, but they let him out on, like, an outpatient procedure.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
He's living in an apartment, but he's supposed to be, like,
reporting back
and
yeah.
And this is, again, you were right, it is in New York, the opening part.
Right.
This is the New York section.
Yes.
And one of the things that we should mention is, like, the day he decides to not go back to his therapist, we see him walking down 42nd Street in New York.
Oh.
Which, do you know the history of 42nd Street at all, Adrian?
I know that there's a musical about it.
Yeah.
I don't, actually.
So, 42nd Street is, like, an infamous place in New York that had a lot of sex shops. It had porn theaters.
Yeah, it looked like it.
It had, that's where they had, like, was the street in New York where they would show things like Cannibal Holocaust and, like,
well, one of the shops is named Caligula.
No, they were showing the movie Caligula.
Oh, they were. Oh,
that's
shit.
Yes. That's one of the movie
I didn't
theaters.
know it. I didn't know that was a movie. Okay, gotcha.
Yes. They were showing the movie Caligula. That's where, like, the last house on the left would have been found.
Okay, sure.
I mean, it was just, like, where you got, like, the craziest, sleaziest films. Like, that's where they were shown.
Sure.
In that area.
I do want to point out that while he's walking down that street, there's a guy who clearly walks through the set because he fucking mugs to the camera so perfectly.
Oh, I'm sure.
He, like, jumps up on his toes and, like, does a Michael Jackson move and, like, looks directly into the camera for, like, 2 seconds.
Yes.
Watch for it.
So here's, like, I'm just going to throw out, like, these are
Sure.
the kinds of movies that you would find on 42nd Street at the time.
Okie doke.
Massage Parlor Murders, Flesh Pot on 42nd Street, Satan's Cheerleaders, Cue the Winged Serpent, Cutthroats 9, Splatter Blood-Sucking Freak. You'd find movies like Blackula, Kung Fu Zombies, Barbed Wire Dolls, He Trapped Them and Killed Them. Let's see, what else would you find? Wanda Whips Wall Street.
Nice.
Jungle Holocaust, Cannibal Holocaust, Make Them Die Slowly, Cannibal Pharaoh. You know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's that scene in Taxi Driver where Robert De Niro takes that girl to the movie.
Sure.
That's on 42nd Street.
Ah, that was a bad movie to take her to.
I know, right? I had recently watched, actually, a documentary called 42nd Street Memories.
Oh.
The Rise and Fall of America's Most Notorious Street.
Of course.
Because this is the kinds of movies that I like, and
yeah.
I knew a lot of them came from this era in the 80s.
Well, this movie would have fit well with them.
Well, this movie is actually mentioned in the documentary.
No way.
And that scene where he's walking down the street and he goes into the sex shop in this movie are directly from 42nd Street. That was a real sex shop on 42nd Street.
Oh, wow.
Those were real sex workers in that place.
And they let them just shoot in it.
Yeah, they let him just shoot in it.
Nice.
All of this being said, the thing that I want to just really quickly close the loop on 42nd Street.
Yes.
42nd Street is now known as, are you ready for this?
Go for it.
Basically, it's Times Square in New York.
It's a little bit south of it. Or no.
Not much.
Not much. No, you're right. Yeah.
Because Disney, where the Lion King shows, like all the theaters that Disney owns, they cleaned up 42nd Street.
Holy shit.
They cleaned up those very theaters that people used to like go in and masturbate at while watching movies. And they turned those into the Disney theaters on Broadway.
No way.
Yes.
Oh my god.
This was a reclamation project in the early 90s to make 42nd Street a place where families can go and Disneyfy it.
That's hilarious.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Well, it's like, if you ever seen, like, you know that scene in Jason Takes Manhattan where, you know, Jason Voorhees is walking down the street?
Yeah.
And there's, like, the punks. Like, that's all 42nd Street area. Like, that's all that same area.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Maniac, where he goes and he's watching movies and he goes to, basically, you know, any movie that takes place in the 80s where New York looks like a post-apocalyptic wasteland?
Yeah.
That's, like, all from that area and that era.
Oh my god.
And that time place. So it's interesting to see him walk down that street.
Yeah.
Because this is the exact kind of movie that would then play on that street.
It's fascinating
years later.
It's fascinating that a couple of episodes ago we were talking about the Bronx Executioner.
Yes.
And how shitty New York, quote unquote New York, looked. And truly it could have. You know, at the time it was not. It was not in a great state.
No, not at all. Well, New York's a fine state, but like
it's a fuck you. But no, that's funny. I was actually just in New York earlier this year, dodged the corona, but it's a changed place. If you
it really is.
I mean, it does not look. It looks so shiny.
Yes. Well, there's like, I mean, I remember when I was growing up, and this will probably give you a little bit of a clue to my age, like, there are always jokes about getting mugged in New York.
Sure.
And I didn't go to New York for the first time until I was much, much older.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking down when I first arrived, being super afraid the whole time, like, oh no, I'm going to get mugged.
Right.
And then quickly realizing, like, oh, this is not that place that they were once talking about.
I got all my impressions of New York from movies from the 70s.
Yes, same thing here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Where you're like, oh no, there's going to be people who are cannibals.
Oh, Travis
who
Bickle.
Cook people over trash cans. And that's just not the case anymore. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed seeing all of that stuff, and I thought him going to the sex show was so interesting.
Was.
And you can sort of see how some of his darker... him being, of course, George, some of his darker aspects start opening up.
Right, and do you think that is the change in his personality? I mean, do you think that was the one trigger?
No, I think it was several things.
Okay.
Because, and this is actually one of the things that I really enjoyed about the movie, too, is, like, I felt like throughout the entire thing, George was really fighting the urge to be that person. Like, you could see him trying to, like, take his pills and fight against it.
Sure.
There's a couple more instances later on that I actually really want to talk about that I thought was so fucking cool. That deal with that, but I think we should hold off on, like, that reveal.
Right. Well, but this sort of does set off. This is the, I would say, inciting incident. It may not
in some ways.
It may not be the whole reason why he breaks down, but him going into the sex show and seeing the sex worker, I mean, essentially sends him off on his road trip.
Yes. Which... I have to say, what ends up happening is, you're right, he sees the sex worker, and then almost immediately we get the title card for day 2,
Yep.
and it shows him across the city from New York,
taking a ferry out.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, it's sometimes weird for me to see the Twin Towers in film now.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that shot, just kind of, that's a throwaway idea, but just that.
Huh.
And then we have what I call the Gatsby's bar sequence and the aftermath of that.
Yeah. That's a drawn out, I mean, it sets a tone, but
that's what it was. I loved the tone of that whole sequence.
All right. Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting thing because a woman, I don't remember her name, and it doesn't really matter.
I don't even think she is named.
I think, no, he...
Oh, the one dude says
the guy that she's on a date with comes out, and he's like, Mary, or whatever, can I come home with you? And she's like, not tonight, dummy. And he's like, all right, I'll call you later. Go home. And we see almost her full drive home in real time.
So this was the thing, is like the tone that created. Mm-hmm. I also thought it created a really interesting time and place.
Okay.
And what I loved about it is as she was driving home, well, first of all, when she left the bar, I expected George to kill her.
Yeah, yeah.
And then,
I thought he was going to be inside the car.
And then the whole drive home, I expected George to be inside the car.
Sure.
And I was like waiting for that. Mm-hmm. And that never happened. And I thought it fucked with our expectations really... Oh, her name was Barbara.
Oh, there you go.
It's in my notes. I should have just read.
You should have.
And I just loved the way that it created, like, pacing, time, place, and it really fucked with our expectations.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially... I mean, there are a lot of scenes in this that actually trick us quite a bit.
Well, that's what I really,
kind of interesting.
Was like the whole time I was like, when is she going to get it? And when I finally like started to like relax and think, oh, maybe Barbara's not going to die.
Right.
There's a really great shot where she sort of walks to the phone because she's getting a phone call. She answers it. She puts the phone down, drops something, and leans down to pick it up. And like all of a sudden, George is standing behind her.
Yeah.
And I
it's
actually
a good reveal.
It's
a good reveal.
Yeah, I thought it was a good reveal, and I also thought what made it such a good reveal is that it took so long to get there that I actually put my guard down. So when it happened, I mean, I also got to say, like, her killing, when he kills her, slices her throat, the close-up of her neck, like, when I talk about sleazy and disgusting...
Yeah, it does not flinch.
No, not at all. No. And to watch that knife, like, cut, and it's obviously not real skin.
No, of course.
But, like...
But they did a fine job
graphic.
Of it. Now, I think that we need to... dive in a little bit to the special effects and the makeup and...
Oh, you mean Tom Savini?
Maybe. We don't know. We don't know. There's a lot of contention over this whole thing.
Yeah, so
I'm curious about
this. Was put out,
yeah.
It was billed as being from... Like, the taglines were, from the man who terrified you in Dawn of the Dead and Friday the 13th.
Sure.
You know, if you were terrified by Friday the 13th and Dawn of the Dead, you must see Nightmare.
Oh.
And it was all because they were billing Tom Savini as the person who did all the makeup effects.
Yes.
Tom Savini has come back and said, no. I did not do the makeup effects at all.
No.
What he claims he did was
advised. He was a consultant.
They came to him and asked him questions, and he said, oh, do this and do that. And then they went off and did it.
Yeah.
But he was never on set. But then, of course, there are pictures of him on set.
And Baird talks about him being on set as well in a later interview, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is very... I'm not exactly sure, and I don't think we'll ever get a clear explanation as to why. But do you think that it was because he didn't like the final product, or do you think that he just didn't want to take the credit away from Ed French and the rest of the team?
If I were to guess, my hunch is that Tom Savini is telling the truth.
Okay.
Because he does say that he was hired as a consultant.
Sure.
And my guess is he was there as a consultant. He probably said, like, oh, do this, do that. And then the director ran with his name and tried to cash in on his name.
And do you think it's almost kind of like Robin Williams not wanting his name to be associated or to be used to advertise for the genie? Yeah.
In Aladdin.
In Aladdin, yeah. Or do you think that he just didn't want to be so closely related to it?
That's an interesting question. I think the reason Robin Williams didn't want to be associated with the genie and Aladdin, his whole thing was that... And this is, again, if I'm remembering correctly, Robin Williams wanted the movie to stand on its own and not have, like, the magic ruined for kids.
No, of course, yeah.
Whereas I think Tom Savini... Because, like, look, let's be honest. These special effects are very different than Tom Savini's effects.
Yeah.
I would say these are a little more gory and a little less realistic.
Yeah.
And, like, when Barbara is killed, you can clearly see that it's some sort of, like, mannequin with, like, latex. Whereas Tom Savini's effects, that line is blurred a whole hell of a lot more. I would also say with Savini's effects, not that they're unflinching, but this one was, like, really unflinching in a way that I don't think even the greatest makeup artist could have created realistic effects for the way Scavellini shot that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
But, by the way, the whole dispute between Robin Williams and Disney, there's a great video by Lindsay Ellis. Check that out. About 20-minute video.
From childhood.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I remember him being angry about it in childhood and reading it in the papers, which is why he didn't appear in the sequel.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Right.
And I went to Dan Castellaneta for the sequel.
That's correct. Yes, absolutely. And he also, I think he did the TV series as well.
Yes, and then I think Robin Williams came back
for the third
3 of Aladdin. Wow, I cannot believe that I remember all of that off the top of my head.
Look at you. But we're not talking about Aladdin or
Anyways,
the genie.
Yes.
We're talking about a very disturbing murder.
Yes. So yeah, that I just really love that sequence. Yeah. Eventually, I mean, plot wise, this movie doesn't have a lot. It just cuts back and forth from the family, who are just living their lives. Mom is a new boyfriend.
Mom is a new boyfriend. They don't truly, and I don't know if they were going for this, but they don't truly make the mom or any of the family very likable. Did you think? I mean, she's a bit of a negligent parent.
Yes, so I think she is a negligent parent, but I actually really enjoyed the character of the boyfriend. I thought when he was first introduced, they were like on a houseboat together.
Right.
And he was like, "Come on, baby, why do you have to go? Like, stay with me. Oh, come on, don't go. God, you're really killing my mood." And I was like, what a dick. But then he keeps showing up, and, like, taking care of the kids in really interesting ways. Yeah. In ways that I thought felt truly honest, and it didn't also feel like, hey, I'm gonna try to be, like, your new dad. Like,
you know what? I would say you're right. I like that character out of everyone the most.
Yeah, I really liked him as well.
You're right. He is very genuine.
His name, I think his
Bob Rosen
name was Bob, and he's played by a guy named Mike Cribben.
Okay.
Who did a ton of sound and camera work for other films.
Yeah, I saw that in his IMDb. That was funny.
Which is interesting. But so what ends up happening is while Mom and Bob are having this, like, conversation on the houseboat, CJ, who is one of the 3 children. Yep. And this is where CJ really becomes distinctive versus the rest of the children, for me at least. Yeah. Is told to take out the trash. He takes out the trash and he sees George across the street.
What?
The next thing we know is CJ comes in and he's bleeding from the stomach. He's cut open and he's screaming. And CJ's like 9 in this movie.
Yeah, tiny kid.
And the 2 older kids are on the phone with Mom, like, Mom, CJ, you gotta get here. CJ's been stabbed. He's dying.
Oh, man.
Bob and Susan, Susan's the mom's name. Bob and Susan fly over to the house as quickly as they can in the car. They come in, and CJ's fucking dying.
Yeah, it looked like it.
He's dying. He's dying. He's dead.
He's dying. He's dead.
He's dead.
Wait, Nick, did you not watch the movie past that moment?
No, I stopped that because it was a child in danger.
And you didn't want to see any that end in tragedy.
No, it was actually Bob gets down on his knees. He's like, "I'm gonna hold on. Let me take care of you." Slowly lifts up CJ's shirt, and he looks and he, like, licks his fingers. And I was like, "What the fuck is happening?" And he goes, "Ketchup." CJ opens his eyes and starts laughing.
You know, that's a really creepy connection to later.
Yes, which I thought was great.
So weird. But I will say, though, before he gets found out, that kid is acting pretty damn well for dying.
I
believed it. Yeah.
When we got to the point where it was ketchup, I was like, "Oh, you little fucker."
I felt it. I was like, "Oh,
fucker.
Are you fucking kidding?" Also, I want to say everyone in that family, including the little girls, are dumb and negligent because
none of them called 911.
none of them called 911.
I actually was curious because I wrote down you should call 911.
Not your
and
parents.
Then I thought to myself,
not your mom.
Wait, when did 911 come into like effects?
Right.
And it turns out that like, yes, it was invented. It was not.
Like
they were just a dumb family.
Maybe a decade or earlier.
To be fair, we have to also look at the fact that maybe,
yes,
and just think about this, they were worried about the cost of health care.
Why would they be? America has such good...
Oh, hey-oh.
We're not going to go into that.
No, we're not going to go into that. What I thought was really great about that moment is they set it up so well with George outside looking at CJ, and he even starts approaching CJ before CJ comes in all bloody.
It was,
I was willing to buy that George had stabbed him.
It was, they're giving you all of the evidence.
Yeah, well, and especially with how monstrous he was with Barbara.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
So I was totally... Oh, by the way, in that Barbara killing, not only does he slit her throat, when he starts stabbing her in the stomach and it's, like, eroticized...
Yeah,
I was
truly
creeped out.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of cutting back and forth to his nightmares and his childhood and everything. Yeah. Have we established yet the childhood flashbacks? Or is that... I mean, it grows
now
and grows.
Is where they start coming in.
Yeah.
Where please explain the childhood flashbacks.
Well, the childhood flashback shows a young tow-headed fellow. I'm assuming he's pretty young, maybe 10-ish, and
it's like CJ's age. He's like 9.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And it is George. It's George Tatum, and he is walking in on his father. And we don't know this yet, but it doesn't matter that we're revealing this to you. It's not his mother. It is an affair, and she is tying the father up and slapping him. It's a bit of an S&M affair, and we see some violence towards the mistress.
Well, I have to say, what becomes fascinating in that moment is in every other version of this kind of thing that I have seen, it's always the mom who's alive and the dad is dead.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So I had actually assumed that it was his mom and she was a sex worker with the John, because that is the setup for many, many, many other movies like this.
Interesting.
So that the reveal was that was actually his dad, and the woman was a
mistress.
A mistress,
yeah.
Who I think is actually a dominatrix.
Sure, probably.
She is beating up on the dad.
Yeah. Funny enough, I did feel like it was the dad, but I also thought that it was the mom, and I thought that George was seeing his mother beat his father. And was just all confused by it. Regardless, the result clearly is the same, that he has, relating to that sexualization of the murder of Barbara
and
earlier.
fetishization of violence.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's very interesting because his reaction to that is so complicated that I actually, it was tantalizing. You know, it was very engrossing, I would say, to look at him crying over it and apologizing to Barbara as well. He cries and he says, I'm sorry, fighting with himself.
He takes the time to bury her.
Yes.
And not like it didn't feel like a shallow grave situation. It felt more like a reverence situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't like he was desecrating the body. He was almost ritualistic.
Yeah. At this point, basically, the mom wants to sell the house that the family is living in because everywhere she looks, she sees her ex-husband.
Yeah, and she's frustrated about many things in her life, but that seems like the one thing that she can control.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is where she's got that moment with the awful, awful, terrible real estate salesman. That guy is not good. Stalesman, I think is what I said. Stalesman.
Yeah, his name's Ray Baker. He doesn't even get a character name. He's real estate agent.
He shouldn't.
Doesn't
Ray Baker / real estate agent asks for pictures of the house to sell the house.
Yep.
And we go back and Bob and Susan are taking pictures.
I actually really liked this line. I loved the Bob line where she was like, could you get a Polaroid picture of the house? And he was like, God, it's like asking Picasso to paint your car. Because he is an artist.
Because he is an artist.
Yeah. I get that.
And they look at the Polaroid, and in the Polaroid, there is a man in one of the windows.
Right.
They look up, and there's no man there, so they run upstairs, and they can't find anybody. Which I thought that whole sequence was pretty great, too, because now all of a sudden, I was like, oh, wait, maybe George is inside the house.
Sure.
Like, we don't know what's going on.
And actually, most of that scene is shot in the Giallo-style POV.
Yeah.
Through a door,
throughout moments,
through a door with muted audio of the of Susan and Bob, out in the hallway. So we're getting that claustrophobic feeling. We're getting the feeling that we're being watched,
which is so interesting because this movie has a bunch of shots like that throughout. And sometimes those shots are actually George's POV.
Right.
And then sometimes it's just the way the camera is placed.
Although, do you think, and thematically this might make sense, do you think it could be CJ?
Oh, that's a really great question.
Because we never actually see where CJ is in the house during that time.
Is CJ even in the house during that time? Because I thought he was out.
Was that when he was riding his bike?
I think he was at school. I don't know if that's when he was riding his bike.
Who knows? Maybe he skipped school. He's an asshole.
Interesting. Yeah, he is a little shithead. This is where there's a line. This is actually one of the lines I really loved. Is when Bob just out of nowhere is like, "Hey, it's like Antonioni's blow up," and like references a movie that I just thought that was really interesting. I also don't know exactly where this is. Like, what exactly happened that made me think this, but I wrote down that, at this point, that I feel like this movie does a really good job subverting expectations. Because I think at any point I expected George to run out of a closet or start something, or them to find something.
It's a bit of restraint.
Yeah. This is also, we cut to from there, the doctor who is leading
the drug trials.
The drug trial.
Josh Gad.
His moment with the computer.
The computer is science fucking fiction. This, I mean, for 1981, it's like having the Minority Report computer. He might as well have the thing with the dragging the stuff, the touch screen with the gloves. I mean, he is putting stuff in there that's like, hey, so we're definitely looking for this specific car. Oh, it's been found abandoned in South Carolina.
I was okay with that because
no.
do the make model,
but the extrapolation, it was like,
good.
Okay, now let's look for anything, any car that's been stolen within 24 hours after that. Well, there is one with a woman that has been murdered. How do we know that she's been murdered? Well, she's not there, and there's a bunch of blood all over the place, and there's no suspects. And then what was the third one? They narrowed it down to 4 different spots.
91% he was going to Florida. It was so good. And also too, I just want to say that like the words on the computer screen were so big that you could only fit maybe 1 to 2 words all the way across, and at the most there was like 5 lines of text.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's actually I tossed in.
I'm looking at it right now. The 8 lines of text.
They couldn't even put. So there's 8 lines of text. It's the very first thing you see of this weird computer.
The one, like, schizophrenia takes up basically the entire screen right to left.
And it's such a weird computer, too, because there's 5 screens, and the middle one is the only one with information, and the other 4 screens have a picture of George on it.
Yes. I mean, this is back in you gotta figure, this was filmed in 1980, where, like, computer technology was not a thing almost anyone dealt with. So this probably felt like, that's exactly how computers
That's what it's going to be. Now, technically, I have 3 screens in front of me, but I have way smaller text. And I can see, I only have 1 picture of you that you know of.
Yay! Also, you know exactly where I'm at. You don't need a computer to tell you.
Exactly. We got GPS. Man, can you imagine if they had LoJack? And this is at the time that it starts the mystery, I think, because we could definitely imagine that, let's say, George just wants to get out of the state. He wants to go. He wants to get as far away on the East Coast that he can from New York. So he goes to Florida. Sure, it's beautiful. It's sunny beaches, let's do that. And at this point, we think, wait, there is a reason why he is heading towards Florida.
Yeah, well, I thought that was a fascinating thing because, like, as you're watching the movie, we, the audience, actually know he's in Florida, so we know that the computer is right. And when the scientist or the doctors make these, like, leaps, we know that, like, oh, yes, they are on the trail.
Yeah.
We just don't know why he's going to Florida.
Absolutely.
And at this point, we get a great moment where George actually calls his doctor, his therapist.
Yes.
And has the freak out in bed with, like, the foaming of the mouth.
That was bizarre to me. Yeah.
I love that scene. And then, like, he cuts to him as the little kid, and that's when we actually find out that he, as a little kid, used an axe to chop off the woman's head.
Yes. Yeah.
In like, that dream sequence.
Oof, that is just the flashes are brutal.
Yeah. And as that head flies up in the air and there's just, like, squirting blood, we hard cut to CJ riding his bike.
Yeah, and actually, we skipped past a CJ. What would we call it?
Act of assholishness.
Yes, yeah. He actually has this great piece of machinery that he built that's like on his shoulders, and the babysitter that's name is Kathy. Is watching them one night, and he has this thing on his shoulders that makes him look like a 6 foot tall man with glowing red eyes. And he says the greatest thing ever. And this is one of my favorite fucking thing.
By the way, I'm just going to throw out this is the part where I was like, I thought they did a really great job subverting expectations.
Yes,
because we think George is in the house, and of course George is going to attack the babysitter
naturally.
And it does the whole thing of like. The babysitter opens up the medicine cabinet.
Sure, of course.
And then, like, the medicine cabinet closes, and, like, the man with the glowing red eyes is there, and she screams. And I was like, oh, that's typical. What I was not expecting was for it to be CJ.
Exactly.
That was shocking to me.
And he pushes he pushes his face out of the shirt, where his face would be, and he says, nanny, nanny, boo-boo, stick your head in doo-doo. That's my favorite line of the whole movie.
So good. The writing is awesome.
And she's like, you son of a bitch. I am not watching you guys again. I'm out of here.
I'm done with these
fucking
kids.
Done. Good. Yeah. That's probably best. Right. CJ is a sociopath.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So that's that night. And then the next day is when we have the conversation with the doctor that George is crying and foaming from the mouth.
Yeah, right. And the axe cut off.
And then the axe cut off, sure. CJ. Yes, exactly. So CJ is riding his bike towards this old abandoned place. This old abandoned house or warehouse or something like that.
Yeah, it looks like an old abandoned beach house.
Right. And he rides past this girl that he apparently knows, and he also meets up with a friend of his that wants to play hide and seek around that same house.
Tony is the kid's name.
Tony.
And he's like, come to the house, Tony, we're going to play.
Yeah, bring all the other kids. It'll be fun.
Tony's like, okay, I'll go get him and I'll meet you back here.
Yeah. I thought this was just a little messy. This whole scene, to me, was odd because it was implied that CJ was going to go in there and, he would be the initiator of going into this house. And yet, he and the other kid are not the first ones in the house. The girl that we saw, the jogger on the side of the road, she ends up going inside the house first for some reason.
Well, wasn't CJ in the house, got bored, and then left and then came back later?
I suppose. It was just a very extended scene, it felt like. That one didn't have the pacing that I wanted from it.
Although, there is something that I really loved in that moment, which was, so the jogger, who I assume is the sister of the other little kid on the bike.
We'll say
Tony,
that. Sure.
But we'll just say that.
Yeah.
George finds her and kills her.
Yeah.
And then Tony shows up looking for CJ. And I actually thought the scene was shot really, really well. What we had was Tony's looking through the house. Tony's also like 8. Tony's looking through the house trying to find CJ, calling out CJ's name. CJ shows up at the bottom of the stairs and he's like, I'm here, Tony. Where the hell are you?
But I'm also bored, so I'm going to go.
I'm just going to leave.
Dick.
Tony is up in the attic, like, come up here, CJ, it's cool. Tony starts walking towards this wall. We can see behind the, it's like a false wall. It's like just a sheet of plywood. We can see sort of blood hanging out behind that sheet of plywood that Tony, I assume, can't see.
Yep.
As he gets closer, he kind of knocks the plywood over. And there is the dead jogger with rats all over eating her.
Ooh,
Cut back to Tony.
It's weird.
Tony freaks out.
Yep.
And in the background, on the right half of the screen, we see Tony freaking out. On the left hand of the screen, we see someone coming up the staircase.
Yes.
It's obviously an adult.
Yes.
And that moment was really cool because then, like, we cut to the kid is dead. Tony is dead. And there's this great scene with CJ and this cop that I thought was super intense.
That was
the cop was like,
weird
look
fucking
at this
scene.
kid. Look at this kid. Do you know this kid? Were you here today with this kid?
But
why were you here?
Do you really drag the mother, the child, the other children in the family down to the murder place?
No. Well, I'm assuming that
show them the murder victims.
I'm assuming sleuthing techniques have changed a lot. Like,
perhaps.
you never see that today. But I do feel like I've seen that in a lot of movies of the 80s.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, come here. Look at this body.
Jesus
that's
Christ.
still laying here. What's the deal? I actually thought that scene was really great. I thought that scene was scary.
It's intense, and I get it for shorthand of it's cinematic. It's more cinematic than bringing the kid down and just asking him in the sheriff's office or anything like that. Yeah, I get it.
We have this really nice moment where I don't remember exactly how it happens, but CJ's basically home alone after Tony is dead, and George is in the closet and he's struggling to hold it together. He's trying to take his pills and he drops his pills all over the ground.
Yeah.
CJ picks them up, like, what the fuck are these? And he looks like he's actually taking one of the pills.
I think he was smelling it.
He was smelling
Pretty
it?
sure, yeah.
And this is one of those things that I actually loved, going back to, like, George trying to hold it together.
Yeah.
Is he actually uses the phone upstairs to call downstairs.
Yes.
Now, in most movies like this, the call that comes from inside the house is like, I'm gonna kill you.
Right.
But what ends up happening here, and I thought it was really cool, was that George is like, you need to leave. If you want to survive, you have to leave the house.
That's right.
It's not safe for you here. Please, 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 please go.
And CJ thinks that it's one of his friends playing a prank on him.
Yeah.
Because of all of the things that have been happening around the neighborhood.
At this point, we cut to a scene with the guy who's running the drug trial, the therapist, and another therapist.
Yeah, they're on a road trip to make it down to Florida before he kills anybody else.
I actually thought that scene was a really nice moment. I thought the argument was realistic. I thought the acting in the scene was pretty on point.
Yeah.
Which is weird because, like, earlier scenes with those two characters, meaning the drug trial guy,
it was
and the
very
therapist,
uncomfortable.
Were not great.
No, they weren't.
But I thought this scene was actually really solid.
It was better. It was maybe being out in the world rather than on a set. Although I think that the asylum was a real asylum, wasn't it?
Yeah, the asylum was a real asylum that they shot in.
That's crazy.
Back in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is nuts.
Yeah.
Then we have the scene where Kathy, the babysitter, comes back for one night to make money.
That was another one of those awkward scenes where I feel like they just told the mom to talk on the phone in an improv and try to convince Kathy that she should come back and watch her kids. And it went on much longer and much more awkwardly than I think it really should have. There's multiple times where she tries to convince her, and you can just tell that she's struggling with any prompts that they're giving her.
Well,
it grated on me. I don't know.
Let's be like, you made it sound like that scene is 7 minutes long. Where if I had to guess, that scene was like 30 seconds.
It's forever. He's wrong. It was 1 minute and 20 seconds. But you do see boob, so I guess I get it.
I feel like that scene was 30 seconds.
Okay.
And what I thought was interesting was she started using tactics like, you need the money, Kathy. I'll give you $20 for 2 hours work in $1981.
That's like you can afford a fucking moped for that.
Well, Kathy's boyfriend, Joey, comes over.
Oh, that was a great reveal, too, actually. That was...
I thought so. I thought that was a great fake out.
Because she puts all the kids to sleep, and she sits down and starts watching the tube, and the door starts creaking open, and it's a man from the waist down that we see. And he sneaks over and has his arms out like he's going to strangle her. And then...
Or slit her throat.
Or slit her throat.
Seen him do,
exactly. And yet... Oh, it's your boyfriend. Oh,
it's your boyfriend.
He's going to be making out.
Yeah, I thought that was, again, a solid fake out.
Yeah.
And then, yet again, there's this really, really nice setup and switch where Kathy and the boyfriend have sex. Kathy goes to take a shower. The boyfriend starts walking away, and we see basically someone who looks exactly like CJ with the mask and everything.
Yep, yeah.
But he pulls out a garrote wire that's made of barbed wire.
That was fucked up.
That was... I love that.
Now,
it was nuts.
Here's the one problem I have with his barbed wire garrote. Because that's...
little blood?
No. That's a great murdering tool. That's a great murdering tool. But... that shows premeditation to me. That shows like he has lost his fucking mind at that moment.
That's true.
Like the rest of it was like, yeah, you could have a knife. Yeah, you could like strangle someone. Yeah, you could like, murder someone randomly. But unless he found that somewhere, like that shows creating that thing is really fucked up.
Yeah.
But it's, I just thought it's brutal as hell.
It's brutal as hell. And at this point, Kathy comes out and she's like, Joey, where are you? George kills Kathy.
With a rock pick.
I was going to say, it reminds me of the thing from Shawshank Redemption. It's the thing that Andy Dufresne asks for.
Exactly. Yeah. Worn down to a nub.
Brutal.
Oof.
And this
stabs her through the hand. And then
the hand first,
a bunch in the back,
stomach in the back.
Yeah.
What I thought was really awesome about this moment is CJ oversees it, and he starts running upstairs and he's like, "Kathy's being killed. Kathy's being killed." And the sisters are like, "Shut up. Go to bed. I'm tired of your bullshit."
Well, Bob called him on it earlier. He was like, "You've heard the story of the boy who cried wolf, right?"
Yeah, the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really... I actually loved the fact that completely paid off.
Yeah.
We skipped over this part. So when Bob calls him on it earlier, the family's having like a picnic at the beach.
Right.
And CJ's looking through his binoculars. And CJ goes, "Oh my God, that's the man who I saw.
Right.
I've seen in the neighborhood." And Bob is like, let me see. He's like, "The guy over there?" And CJ's like, I don't know if that was him. And that's when Bob goes, "Have you ever heard about the boy who cried wolf? People aren't going to believe you, this, that, and the other thing." Which I thought was really great later, because I thought that was going to be the end of the boy that cried wolf moment. The fact that it continued further, I thought was great. Which, when the mom called on the phone from where she was at, I thought that was a really fascinating moment. Because, like, at this point, like, CJ can't necessarily call.
No.
Like, answer the phone and be like, "Mom, someone's dying," because mom's going to be like, "Shut the fuck up."
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also, I don't think he can even get to a phone. But
there's that too.
Funny enough, George can, and George picks up.
Yes.
And doesn't say anything.
Just hangs up, and Mom and Bob are like, "That's weird. We should maybe go check out what's happening."
And we've said that George has a Halloween mask, like the actual mask that CJ may have had on that little bust.
Yes.
That he was wearing before.
Speaking of, because you say Halloween mask, it wasn't like the mask from the movie Halloween.
No. Clear. Of course.
It was the best I could figure. Was that a Sid Haig mask?
Dude, I thought the exact same thing.
Or like a really bad Mr. T mask, but Mr. T is like 8 years after.
No, that did not have that was bald. That was a fucking Sid Haig mask. Absolutely.
That's what it looked like to me.
It was bizarre.
I couldn't figure it out.
Right?
And usually I'm pretty good about picking those things out. I could not figure this out. CJ's in his mother's bedroom, and I thought this was a really great Shining reference because George uses the rock hammer to like slam through the door.
A bunch of
times. Looking through the door. He doesn't quite do the "here's Johnny" thing, but he kind of looks through the door.
He definitely does.
But from this point of view, what happens is what he can see is CJ pulling a gun. And CJ just starts fucking shooting through the door.
Yeah.
CJ's a little badass with that gun.
He shoots his hand. Like he is a marksman. Well, it's a revolver, so yes.
It's a revolver. He shoots him like 6 times.
But he first hits him in the hand when he's trying to unlock the door. Then he shoots him in the gut like 4 more times.
George falls down the stairs.
Yeah.
CJ runs out of the house with his sisters. They get outside and someone goes, wait, where's Kathy? And CJ's like, fuck, I'll go get her. CJ runs back inside, which I thought this was a great moment because he then, like, in the background, of course, George is still alive.
Of course.
CJ grabs a shotgun and shoots him in the stomach twice.
Right? What the hell, man?
When we cut to as George lays dying,
we see the full experience as a child.
Yes. Which was
disturbing.
Yes. Basically, young George comes home from school.
Yep.
Goes upstairs. His dad has been tied to the bed by this woman.
Right.
He watches this woman mount his father and start beating the father till the father's starting to get blood.
Slapping him in the face over and over again.
Which then George walks outside. Is like, I don't know what to do.
But, I mean, I don't know if he had any confusion, honestly. Like, he walks directly to the woodshed in the back.
He comes outside and he stands on the steps and he sort of like pauses, like, what the fuck do I do?
Yeah, but he decides something very definitively.
That he's going to get an axe.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And chop the woman's head off. He takes 2 axe strikes to chop her head off, and the geyser of blood that shoots out, which I also was like, what I thought was incredible is because it's 2 different geysers.
Yeah, of course.
That shoot out of the woman's neck as she's reaching up, and like her hands.
And the hands were still reaching. Yes. As
the head has flown off, CJ then starts just slamming the axe into the back of this woman. There's blood everywhere. I said CJ, I meant George, young George. George is covered head to toe in blood. By the way, George is wearing all white in that scene.
Yeah,
so now he's
perfect.
covered in all red.
Yep.
And the dad is like, no, you don't understand. And he crawls up on top of the dad.
Yep, and he stands right above him and plants the goddamn axe in his dad's head.
This all comes down to what I think is so interesting. I think this is actually, I could be wrong about this, but what it seems like is that young George watched his dad with his dominatrix. It's like a dominant, submissive.
Yes.
That young George didn't understand such things as dom and subs.
Of course.
Saw his dad getting beat up and was trying to protect his dad, which I think, like, to me, what becomes fascinating about that is in America, we are, and I'm probably putting too much on this movie, but we are such a weirdly Puritan society.
Yes.
For where we've come from, like, as compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I'm curious if Scavolini is trying to make a point about America's puritanical thing, and, like, if Dad just talked to young George about sexuality, if this would have been avoided.
It's interesting because the father, almost by inaction, by not talking to him about that, essentially is destroying his childhood, and therefore he destroys him back. You know, he feels betrayed by his father for not explaining these things, or not allowing him, because the kid seems very weirdly straight-laced. I mean, the kid has a tie on, for God's sake.
As like a 9-year-old, a little chubby 9-year-old with a tie.
Also, his fucking dad's face, like, gushes blood, too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
When we say that he buries the axe in the dad's face, we actually see the dad's face, like, practically split in half, as if it were, like, a predator mouth.
Yeah. Quentin Tarantino probably loved this movie.
Oh, I'm sure Quentin Tarantino loves this movie.
Yeah.
What ends up happening next is, you know, it's that scene where people are getting loaded into the ambulance that happens at the end of the movie.
Of course. Everyone's
Bob
around.
And Susan are coming home, and CJ is in the back seat of the car.
Right. And at this point, they're doing the weirdest thing. They're wheeling Kathy out on her front, like she's laying on her belly, like, and they're wheeling her out.
That's what you focus on in this moment?
Absolutely. That's a weird fucking thing. She's also not in a body bag. She's clearly dead. Wrap her up inside the house. There are a lot of fucking people and the news outside. Also, this was weird that they keep, like, opening the victim's sheets. They keep being like, and here's the boyfriend. Good. All right. And here's the dead guy. Hit. Good. That was just weird to me. Again, it was the same thing that they were revealing the dead Tommy or Tony earlier on. I don't know.
I have a feeling that this is actually a generational thing because I in a lot of, I don't know if this is a movie thing or if this is just this is how news used to be. But like they would show pictures of dead bodies on the front page of the news.
All right.
Like there are numerous movies that have that moment where it's like just a massacred body on the cover of the news being like murder. Again, that's in film.
Yeah,
that could be a film language, but I somehow don't think that was
out of
like I think that was fairly accurate.
All right. Okay. That's fair. Still weird. Still a weird way to wheel a girl out on a gurney.
True.
That's all.
But the bigger point in this moment is is that as Bob and the mom are standing there, they pull the mask off of George, and Mom sees it and goes,
"Oh God damn it!
That's my husband," and runs away, which wasn't exactly a gigantic shock.
It wasn't a gigantic shock, but it's like you had no time to process it. Like it's like
you have no time to process
seconds.
it because we cut to from there, CJ in the back of the police car, and it cuts back and forth between CJ and young George covered in blood. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. CJ looks at the camera, smiles, winks, and then goes to like a deadpan face, and that's how the movie ends. Dude, talk about like again like themes, like the cycle of violence moves on. Like
of course,
George killed his father, CJ killed his father. They both have these like psychological childhood traumas of blood. They also seem to each have some sort of personality disorder. Man.
You know what? The one thing, like everything else, I think is a fine part of this movie. I give it more credit than I did going into this podcast, actually, because just letting.
Well, then I've done my job. Good night.
Yes, indeed. Goodbye. Signing off. But I actually don't really love the breaking of the fourth wall, the wink.
Oh.
I think he could have smiled, like just looked out and smiled at the thing and just like laughed and then just went straight back to the thing. But the wink was such a breaking of something that seemed like it was intending to be, like you say, a commentary on all of these themes.
Well, my guess is that's a direct nod to the end of Psycho.
Yeah.
Norman Bates breaks the fourth wall basically at the end of Psycho. He looks directly at the camera and smiles.
Yes, but it could be just to nothing. You know what I mean?
True. I mean, yeah, sure. I'm assuming, though, at the end of the day, though, that is a nod to Psycho.
Yeah, you're right.
That
is
moment
true.
At the end. But yeah, I will say I actually do agree with you that the breaking of the fourth wall was one of those moments where I was like, part of me was like, oh, fuck.
Right.
Because of the wink, because it was like, I know, like,
I'm going to do the same thing.
Well, I'm on the same path. Like, it felt like I know what I did, and I am A-okay with what I did.
Yeah, it's like, I figured it was my dad the whole time.
Well, not even that. Just like, I've been obsessed with violence, and now I got to kill. It was fucking
so great. I'm not as crazy as Kevin McAllister, but I do like me some violence.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not like CJ was home alone or anything. But George was lost in New York.
Oh, metaphorically.
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly. What I think I gave it away early that I had like 11 things that I would steal from this movie.
Yeah.
Let me ask you first before I go down my massive list. Like, what would you steal from this movie? Because it's not quite right to say what's canon, because this isn't canon film. But I do think that there are lessons to learn from this movie.
Yeah, there's some very interesting. I think there's something to learn from the framing device of the days.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was necessary for this. I think it does advance the tension a little bit. But I'm not exactly sure it does so much for the movie. I think if you cut it out, it would not affect it one bit. I mean, maybe a small bit. But I think there is definitely a way that you could use something to that effect. I think almost a countdown might have been more interesting. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I don't know. But I would say we could absolutely steal something to that effect. I think super titles, I think Quentin Tarantino uses them quite interestingly.
Yes.
I think other people have in the past. But yeah, I think we can learn from that. I think we can learn from the intercutting of some of the stuff. There was a weird scene that we didn't talk about, and it's just a transition, in fact. But it's the doctors talking to each other, and one of the doctors says, "Get off your ass and find him." Scavellini literally cuts from that line to George getting up off of his bed in the hotel in his undies, getting off of his ass and going to take his medication or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a very they use the cuts quite cleverly. I think
I thought the cuts were effective.
The cutting back and forth, especially, I would actually, this is a movie that I'd watch again, honestly, just to see if there are more things that line up, especially the cutting between George and CJ, knowing that they are related, knowing that it is part of the theme to say the sins of the father are revisited on the son. You know, it's quite handily done. What else? I think a road trip is always an interesting way to ramp up tension. Also, to understand that it's happening in two places. I guess that's how the super titles at the very beginning, saying first day in New York and first day in sort of line up the events.
Yeah.
So I get that. And so, yeah, a road trip of a murderer coming towards somebody, and I really to murder. Yeah, it really advances the plot. So, anything else? No, I feel like if I go any further, I'm gonna steal something from your list.
Oh, you already have, and that's
good.
Totally okay.
I'm glad.
One thing I should mention now that I'm really thinking about it is I made this offhanded comment of when she was like, "That's my husband," and she ran away. And
right.
We find out that it's CJ's father.
Mm-hmm.
I should say that there were definite times in the movie where I thought the reason George was going to that house was because that was the house where the violence took place.
That's exactly. I was actually waiting for them to cut back to young George to compare the rooms.
And then when we find out that it was actually because that's his family.
Yes.
I should say that, like, that thought crossed my mind at a certain point, so I wasn't exactly like, oh, no surprise whatsoever.
Right.
There was a part of me that was like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what it was. So I didn't see that coming from 10 miles away. I just saw it coming from 10 feet away.
Yes, yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
And the reason I say that partially is because the super titles of First Day New York, First Day Florida, what I did like about that is from that moment on, we knew that these two stories were going to clash in an interesting way. And I was, at that point, like, ooh, what's the clash going to be?
Right, yeah.
And I thought that's what the super titles did really well, and especially when we got to the final day.
Yeah.
Because at that moment, I really was leaning in like, ooh, what the fuck is going to happen?
Yeah.
And I think it really especially pays off with moments like Kathy's boyfriend coming in.
Yes.
Because it's the final day, you know Kathy's going to die because she's the babysitter.
Yeah, they always go.
But then when it turns out to be her boyfriend, I was like, oh, shit. So
maybe she'll make it out.
Maybe she'll make it. So in that, I thought that helped set an ominous tone.
Sure.
But also helped, throw our expectations off. I really love the opening nightmare with the woman opening her eyes.
Oh,
Christ. The bed.
Yeah.
That got me really good.
Absolutely.
The juxtaposition of shots when he's walking down 42nd Street with his nightmares, I thought was real fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really loved the place, the time, the sleaziness, and Barbara's murder. I thought, again, I mentioned this like 19 different times, but the way they subverted expectations, I thought was really smart. I loved when George is calling the shrink and he's got the foam coming out of his mouth. I loved when young George was killing his dad with the axe.
Yeah.
And then we cut to CJ on the bike. That cut was really cool.
You know what was creepy about the young George was when it was all done with and he just sat down in the chair. Oh, that was haunting. He was just like
looking at his handiwork.
He was like, I'm done. Oh, and that was, again, I think we didn't pull it all the way around because we didn't want to give it away, but that's when he first tastes the blood.
Yes, you're right. George tastes the blood at that moment.
Yeah. And
which also,
yeah,
if you think about him sitting down in the chair admiring his handiwork,
yes.
At the end of the movie, CJ is sitting down in the cop car
admiring his handiwork. Yeah, he just doesn't have any blood on his hands.
Blood
oddly.
taste.
Yeah. Dang it.
I mean, metaphorically, he's got blood on his hands.
Oh, very nice.
Oh.
There it is.
I really loved the shadow on the staircase when the kid finds the jogger in the house.
Oh, his own shadow? That was so creepy.
It wasn't his own. It was George's shadow. And his own.
And his own shadow. Yes, of course, because
all of it was really cool.
You see his shadow like freaking out next to him, and then you see the shadow rising up from the stairway, like almost to connect. Yeah, it was creepy as hell.
That was really awesome.
Yeah.
I agree with you that it doesn't make a lot of sense that the cop would question CJ in front of Tony.
It's so mean.
But I thought that scene was actually really intense.
It was.
That scene got me.
It was.
And I thought the axe murder of the dad and the mistress was really brutal.
Oof.
In a really fascinating way.
It was a very interesting centerpiece for the whole movie because it bookended it essentially.
Yes. Well,
it kind of does.
Her face and the head on the ground bookended it because we don't see the axe murder until the first time about halfway through.
I think it's earlier than that. I think he has a bit of a flash of it because he has a couple of flashes in and out of his like layers of flashes. It's very interesting. Layers.
But the opening sequence is just the woman's head on the bed.
It's true, but it is based upon the one. You know,
it's the severed head. That's the part that matters.
Rather than bookending it, it's a through line.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
A developing mystery.
The actual severed head, though, does bookend the movie.
Yeah.
If you really think about it.
Yes.
But yeah, and that's basically it. Like, I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff to steal.
Yep.
I went into this expecting to be really, really bored.
Sure.
Because, slasher movies of the 80s, and this is going to be really sacrilegious to say, but even like the original Friday the 13th, if you've seen that recently.
Yep.
The original Friday the 13th is kind of boring.
It's slow. At times. It is slow. Well, and they're
really slow.
You know what's funny is I bet you that the body count of this is higher than that.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Isn't there like I think it's 6 or 7
in this movie?
In Friday the 13th. There's only like eight kids, and the girl survives at the end. So
yeah, it's not a lot.
No.
Research AJ here. So very sorry we got this one wrong. Friday the 13th has 10 kills, a much superior body count to Nightmare's 8. However, they tie with on-screen deaths at 6. All right, back to the show.
But, yeah, so, like, I expected to have that pacing of a slasher of the 80s.
Yeah.
And I actually thought it didn't. I thought it had a different kind of pacing, and I also didn't expect it to be, and I keep using this word, sleazy, but it just feels like the perfect word.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect this movie to be such a sleaze, like, so sleazy. Like, sometimes watching it, I felt like I need a shower because I feel gross.
Well, oddly, it's... You say that, and it is sleazy, but only here and there. That's the oddity of it. Sure. Is like the rest of the movie feels so restrained and sort of based in extreme reality. You know, I mean the interpersonal relationships,
almost mumblecore thing happening.
The mumblecore, the relationship between the boyfriend and CJ being very realistic and less confrontational. Just also, boy, how much of non-characters were the sisters?
Oh, they barely existed,
right?
Yeah,
that was laughable. That was just like, oh man, they're surprised to be in any scene they're in.
Yeah.
Like, what are we?
Oh wait, they exist?
Is that a camera?
In a way, the only reason that the sisters were there was for the one scene when CJ is stabbed.
Yeah, to trick them.
Yes,
into contact with the mother.
Yeah, literally, there is no reason for. That's actually really funny now that I think about it. There's no reason for them to exist.
No, there's not.
And like for CJ to save them at the end. But,
right.
They're non-entities. You're right.
Pretty much.
So, what do you think? I mean, like,
I don't hate it as much as I did before.
Yay! I've done my job.
No, it's more thought provoking. Like, truth be told, we obviously watched this separately. Nick had a whole night in the morning to ruminate on this.
I watched it last night. Usually, I watch it just before we start.
Right. We started recording this maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes after I got done with the movie. So I think, again, it's very hot today. I didn't have a great morning, and I think I went into this resenting it for some reason. I don't know. Like, funny enough, though, that opening scene, it hooked me. Like, the scene with him waking up in the bed with the severed head is incredible. And then it started doing the flash here and there, and it wasn't giving me a clear narrative immediately. So I was sort of frustrated with it, and then it sort of became a meandering with the tone and with the pacing. And so I don't know if I gave it too much criticism too early on to enjoy the rest of the ride. But I am glad that we talked about it. I'm glad that we do these podcasts, because it does absolutely give me a breather, and it gives me an ability to talk it out rather than just dismissing it out of hand at the end of my viewing of it. You know, so I'm glad. I think I'd watch this again. I don't know if it'd be at the top of my list, but I would.
I'm curious too, if because I watched it at night. You know, I started at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
So I got to watch it at night.
Yeah, spooky. Yeah.
And also too, I should say, a couple months ago, I've been meaning to do this, but I picked up Arrow Films, which is a Blu-ray releasing company out of England, out of Europe, released a Herschel Gordon Lewis box set.
Oh.
And I don't know if you've seen a bunch of Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, but there's 14 of them in there. And then I had a couple others on hand, and I was like, oh, I'm going to give myself a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie marathon.
Ooh.
Over the course of time. So I've watched 16 Herschel Gordon Lewis movies in the past week and a half. And the one thing that I will say that's nuts about them is this movie moves at a blistering pace compared to Herschel Gordon Lewis movies.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Especially middle career Herschel Gordon Lewis. Like, early career moves faster, later career moves faster. But he has this whole string of movies where he actually will talk about, I just hadn't made a movie in a while, in a couple of weeks, and I was like, it's time. So I just grabbed the camera and some friends.
Christ.
And you, the pace is the slowest thing, and there was actually a scene in one movie that I watched recently where some dude came to confront another dude, and he's like, I'm talking to you, and the one dude was like, over here. And we watched them walk over, pull out pool cues, set up the pool ball, do the top, each take 4 shots, and then they started their conversation. And this was all one shot that was unbroken for about 4.5 minutes. So,
damn,
I now should throw out that
okay,
that's the pace of what I've been watching recently. So
your resistance is high.
Yeah, my resistance these days are really high,
dude. All right,
so I should throw that out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But
I get it.
This
I
comes
get it
with
now.
a high recommend for me, a real high recommend.
Nice.
Well, I thought this was a great example of early 1981, 42nd Street grindhouse / drive-in movie.
Well, and it is not without thought. It's not a slasher movie for slasher movie's sake. The most surprising thing to me is that it had some substance to it. It had a message in the end, and that was very odd to me, because I mean, you can watch any movie and ascribe it some sort of meaning. You can say that it has metaphor, but there are some movies that really don't. There are some movies that are made just to point a camera at some gross stuff or some humanity and say, there you go. That's whatever it is whatever it is. You know, I put that up on the screen. I just wanted to freak somebody out, or I just wanted to show something, and it doesn't necessarily get deeper into the human psyche. And this clearly did.
It tried to, at least.
It did, yeah.
And I think for 1981, it's actually really interesting how it was trying to examine how childhood trauma affects people throughout their lives, because that is still a thing that they're studying and people are still figuring out, is the way childhood trauma works.
Yeah.
I also got to say too, I gotta give some credit to Scavellini in that his... Now, it's gonna sound like it may be a weird statement, but, like, his past as a porn filmmaker...
Yeah.
The way he's not afraid to linger on certain things, and the way he filmed blood and gore as if it were sex, like with the lingering, I thought that actually played into how the movie is constructed and how the movie works.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
Yeah. I thought it was very interesting how there were some... And maybe this was a budgetary issue, but there were a couple of scenes where he didn't even show all of the violence. I mean, there were absolutely, like you say, unflinching scenes of violence, but then Tony, we don't see how he dies at all. We see the result of the girl in the same house as Tony, but we don't see the method.
Well, there's interesting beats of restraint.
Yes. Yeah.
That I think make those moments that are so just like horrific almost feel that much more horrific.
It's interesting.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
So, anyways.
Well, good. All right. Well, that was Nightmare, everybody.
That was Nightmare.
Wow. All right, Nick, what do we got up next week?
Next week, AJ, we are going to go ahead and watch a movie that will probably steal your heart.
What?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Will steal your heart because, I mean, it's not like a love movie or anything.
What? Oh,
it's a
I
movie
thought it was...
it's about a kleptomaniac.
Oh, that's completely different.
Literally, it's going to steal your heart. And it's not like Nightmare where someone's going to rip your heart out of your chest.
It's just they only are interested in taking it. They don't care about the murder part or the life.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No. Next week we are sticking with 21st Century Film Corporation.
All right.
But this is a Menachem Golan produced film.
Oh.
It's 1993's Teenage Bonnie and Klepto Clyde.
That's a complicated title.
That is a terrible title.
Yeah.
And I, fingers crossed, that the movie does not live up to its title and is better.
Surpasses it.
Yeah, because that title feels like vomit every time I've said it.
Fantastic.
So.
Teenage Bonnie and Klepto Clyde.
Yeah, as of recording this podcast, it is available on Vudu. I think to own it.
Oh.
I think I paid $6 for it. So.
Oh, fantastic! And I think it's like $3 to rent. So just double that, and own a piece of canon-ish history.
Yeah, Knish history. Ooh, Knish.
I want a Knish too. Damn it!
Oh,
all right.
Fuck.
Teenage Bonnie and Klepto Clyde next week. All right. Well, I hope that you will be able to sleep after this spooky movie that we all talked about today.
This movie is going to give me wet nightmares.
Oh no!
It's like
no!
Well, I don't have to describe what that is.
No, I think we all figured it out. Just take a towel to bed.
Yeah.
And so, Nick, where can we follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter, Nicholas C. Pappas, or you can follow me on my website. Check that out, nicholascpappas.com.
All right.
A website which is forever under construction.
Finished. Oh, under construction. Sorry. I always forget this. I'm at the AJ Hamilton and theajhamilton.com, and you can follow us at Creating Canon. That's CANNON all over the things. And you can email us, creatingcanon@gmail.com. Please send us your favorite slasher flick from the 80s. We would love to check it out, and we would love to do a little cannon blast on it, maybe. Well, if we got time, why not?
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
I mean, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
What the hell?
And finally, if you would like to support this podcast and you have the means, you can drop over to buymeacoffee.com/creatingcanon and throw some electric coffee grounds our way. I'm still trying to figure out how we get the coffee. I don't know.
And as we always say, Nicholas, good night and Good Cannon.
Cannon!
Cannon! Jesus. All right.
Redonkulous.
124 minutes.
1 and 2
Just use that. All right.
and 3. It was like the sound version of the shaky cam. And then I think, do I need to watch Blair Witch again?
Probably not.
You ever want to see some real fun? Watch Harmony Korine on, I think it's Letterman.
Harmony Korine is a... That's going to be one of the drops at the end.
I forgot we were recording.
You're not going to be any good to CJ. It's CJ.
I don't know what you're getting
natural.
at. AJ.
AJ.
Next week?
Next week. That would be this
Yeah,
point.
this will be the point where we talk about next week. Mike.
Bob.
Sorry. I just burped too.
Nice.
They're very
crazy.
clever.
Oh my god.
Whose name is Tammy.
Kathy?
Kathy, that's
Yep.
it.
No
Okay.
Alaska.
The brother of the little boy on the bike.
Or the sister.
Sorry, the sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Kathy's being... Wait, not Kathy. No, Kathy.
Kathy, yep. Teenage Body and Klepto Clyde.
You said Teenage Body in Klepto Clyde,
Oh.
which is a different movie. You don't want to look that one up.
Okay.
Yes, Andrew James.
Oh. It's AJ.
AJ. Yes, AJ.